Oh, hello, hello. All right, here I am back live from the couch. All right, we have just a few minutes here to go over Chronicles part 11. So you know what that means. Fitting all of this into 12 parts, we are almost done. So I have a small little portion for you today, talking about one of the faults of David. Okay, so everybody who has those spiritual ties and those personal, what do I say, relationship. What am I trying to say? Anyone to whom David resonates, okay, myself included, we go ahead and drop our hands just a little bit because he has his faults. We read about the issue with Bathsheba and his infidelity there, as well as his murder, right? This is really another big problem that David brings upon himself and the people of Israel here in this section. So without further ado, let's read the quote because it ties in pretty well. It says here, "An abomination unto the Lord, but a very present help in time of trouble." And really, this is an interesting quote. It's actually a truncated version coming from, or the truncated verse coming from Proverbs 12:22, and then also the truncated version coming from Psalms 46. If you'd like to read each of those verses in full, by all means go ahead, but it's really just cutting up the verses and putting them together to create this own verse, okay? And it's actually referring to a lie, right? We've talked about this one before. An abomination unto the Lord, but a very present help in time of trouble. So with this, though, we are going to go ahead and apply it to what David does. He actually decides to go ahead and take a census of Israel's fighting men during this time. And this was a poor decision on David's part, and it was more to fuel his own ego, as I have read. Of course, I try to see, what was wrong with the census. Censuses have been taken before. What was the problem with this census? Okay, of course I had to look it up. And it's more so, people were saying, because it was an egotistical thing. And then after, coming to terms with what was done, I did understand that God did not advise, and God did not permit this specific census, because David really has been, all the years that he's been ruling, been on a rampage of war and violence, okay? So with this census, it was basically saying, feeding his own ego in the sense that he is the military giant, and saying he's not done, right? He wants a number of all his fighting men that are ready to go into battle. He wants to know how many lives that he did lose and how many lives that he still has loyal to him and alive and ready to fight again. So essentially what the Lord is saying to David in his disgust with this decision is, you're done, right? You're done with the war. Stop with the war. The bloodshed has already been too much and too great for you to be interested in going into another battle again. And of course, the spectators say it was an ego thing. It was something to fuel his own ego and his own goals and accomplishments. Let's just say that, accomplishments. It was a way to number, quite literally, his accomplishments by way of fighting men. So in this section of First Chronicles, it says, Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census of Israel. This command was also evil in the sight of God, so he punished Israel. The Lord said to Gad, David's seer, "Go and tell David, this is what the Lord says. Take your choice. 3 years of famine, 3 months of being swept away before your enemies with their swords overtaking you, or 3 days of the sword of the Lord, days of plague in the land, with the angel of the Lord ravaging every part of Israel. Now then, decide how I should answer the one who sent me." So David is put in a very hard decision, and at this time too, I would like to ask you, if you were in his shoes, since we all relate so much to the King David, right, to the line of David, what would you choose in this scenario? And as you remember, we will discuss what David chose, okay? He did not want the hands of humans, right? He did not want to fall as victim to hands of humans or his enemies. So again, it's still that ego creeping in there. He did not want to be swept away by war, by the hands of his enemies. He said, "If you will bring a punishment upon me, let it be done through the Spirit or through the Lord's hands, not human hands." That is what he requested. So the Lord abides by his request, and he sends the 3-day plague, okay, that ravages Israel. It certainly does. There is quite a death toll that I will refrain to number right now, but it's in there if you want to go look in chapter 21. The death toll is great, and David is under an immense amount of distress. And he says here to God, "Was it not I who ordered the fighting men to be counted? I, the shepherd, have sinned and done wrong. These are but sheep. What have they done? Lord my God, let your hand fall on me and my family, but do not let this plague remain on your people." With that, the Lord spoke to the angel, and he put his sword back into his sheath. All right, so the angel of the Lord already took its toll, ravaging the land of Israel. And he says, "Please, take it, put it on me. It's my fault." He admits, right, after seeing the damage and, seeing the angel of the Lord physically, he saw it with his own eyes, coming up to one of his consorts, one of his friends of the community. He demanded it to stop, right? He commanded it to stop. And he admitted his wrong, and he admitted his sin. And he said, "Please let it fall upon my family." So with that, the Lord does honor his request, but also says, your line will go through many struggles. As great as it may be, as miraculous as your ancestors will be, they will go through hardship, and they will go through struggle, like we see much further down the line, okay? So the nation of Israel was saved in that sense, but again, there is that trade-off. There is always that trade-off. And again, we'd like to say, why was the Lord so strict in his punishment in result of one man's action? Why did he make that decision to be so strict? And we have to think about the amount, again, of bloodshed in Israel's name under the King of David. How much took place, okay? So it was, I don't want to say balancing the scales, but it was one of those things that had to be done. This is also where we would remember the purpose of death. I don't want to say it like that, but that's kind of what it is. And remembering that death is not the end. It is only the beginning. So as much as we like to get somber, and as much as we like to think that, death is the end of it all, as much as we miss our friends and family here on this earth, it is not the end for them. It is just the beginning. So as sad as it is to have war, have violence, as sad as it is to have a, plague that is commanded by God, right? Terrible thought to have, but it does happen. Just know that death is actually not the worst thing that could happen to you or to anybody. It's actually a great thing. It's a next step for most of us. So again, taking that in and just remembering death is not the end. It is not the worst of the worst. Of course, if you abide by God's laws and stay true to the faith, please him, right? Honor him. Do things to make him happy and to be proud, so there's not an alternative option to you that comes after death. I think that's really the main fear with death, okay? I'm going to leave you here. I appreciate you listening, and I will catch you back another time. All right, have a good day, you guys. Bye-bye.